This is the Pulsar X2, which is literally my new favorite gaming mouse shape, but it's not quite perfect yet, and I'll tell you exactly why in a bit. Now, the shape is the #1 priority with every gaming mouse, and it's really what caught my attention with the X2 when I first picked it up. It's low to the ground with very low click position that makes for a great clicking experience and hand posture in both a claw and fingertip grip, similar to the Endgame Gear XM1 or the Lamzu Atlantis review coming tomorrow. But unlike the XM1, it's narrower overall, and the sides are more like the G Pros, with grooves and indentations and a lot more perpendicular to the table. I personally prefer this because the wide sides of the XM1 that goes outwards as it goes upwards kind of pushes against my fingers in a very uncomfortable way. This, plus the fact that the X2 has a much lower, more minimal hump than the Logitech G Pro, does make it a lot more comfortable for my grip style and my hands. However, it's still not quite as gentle or low as a hump as what you find on a Razer Viper V2 Pro, which is the one thing I really don't like about the Pulsar X2's shape. In fact, it's a bit annoying and a bit sad that it's this close to perfection for my hand that I'm going to mod this. I'm going to pull out some sandpaper, I'm going to sand it down so this hump becomes more minimal. But the thing is, if you claw or fingertip grip the Viper or the G Pro, or similarly shaped and sized mice as this, you might find yourself liking the X2 a lot, as it promotes a much less strained and more natural finger height and angle with its lower click position. With high click position mice, like say the DeathAdder V3 Pro, because your fingers are so upwards, it does feel a bit unnatural and uncomfortable to click sometimes, especially if you're someone with shorter fingers like mine. Another thing I don't like about the hump that I forgot to mention is that it's also a bit further back on the body than the peak of the hump on the V2 Pro, which also forces my hand a bit backwards on the mouse, which means it's a bit harder for me to reach the clicks, which is why I am absolutely going to mod this and send this down after this review. Tell me in the comments, by the way, if you want to see a video of me modding the Pulsar X2. Now, XM1 lovers will probably prefer a shape that is a bit more bulky and a bit more supportive, that has sides that kind of go outwards, just like on the XM1. For those people, you should probably be checking out something like the Lamzu Atlantis, which literally is just an XM1 wireless. Because the X2 feels like a Endgame Gear XM1 that has been deflated and kind of downsized and compacted a little bit. Another thing that does help the X2 feel very natural for me is that there are very deep and very round grooves that feel very natural on the sides and on the clicks of the mouse. They go in and they actually give you a very nice feeling place to put your fingertips. These grooves are deep enough to really give you extra grip and leverage on the mouse without being so deep that it feels like it's forcing your fingers in a fixed position. And the fact that this is a 56-gram mouse does make it very easy to grip and pick up, which is very important for me, a low sensitivity gamer who's always doing this. The coating on here is quite alright too. It's not quite as good as the Logitech G Pro, but I think it's a lot better than the slippery metal on the Starlight and also the matte plastic on the Razer Viper V2 Pro. Obviously that is subjective, and the Starlight does have the advantage of being a lot lighter, so you don't need as much grip to grip it. This, by the way, is the special Founders Edition for the Pulsar X2, which comes in this beautiful olive color with yellow accents and a yellow cable. It's a little more expensive than the normal Pulsar X2 colorways, but you do get glass replacement mice feet included in the box, which I quickly mounted and discovered that I really liked it. There's also another set of PTFE feet inside the box to switch back to if you put on the glass feet and you realize you didn't like it all that much. In my opinion, the design of this mouse is beautiful. One of the most pretty, gorgeous looking mice that I've ever used. Just like the other Pulsar mice that I reviewed in the past, it's very, very intricately designed with a lot of attention to the detail. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again, whoever's doing the design over at Pulsar needs a raise because their logo, their designs, and their aesthetic is top of the line. The clicks and switches on here are pretty good, though I think the main left and right click is a pretty controversial setup. The scroll wheel is very good and very tactile, a little heavier than the Viper, but not as mushy as the Viper. Got a TTC gold encoder in there. The side buttons are non-problematic. They're light, they're crisp, they don't really have pre or post travel, there's no real wriggle. They're very, very solid. But the left and right main clicks are where it gets a bit problematic for some people. But I really like it a lot, whereas someone like Optimum Tech really despises it. He thinks it's too snappy, and I personally think it is an excellent feeling switch because while it is not necessarily a slower switch than the Omrons and Huanos, the Cal GM 8.0 switches in here have a little bit more actuation travel and a deeper sound and deeper thought, which I think makes for a more tactile click experience that is more satisfying to actuate. When I say longer actuation, I don't mean slower. I just mean that when you do actuate this mouse, it kind of travels a little more distance than on your traditional Huano switches or your traditional Omron Mate switches. I personally like it a lot. You really gotta try it to know if you like it. There is, however, one problem that Optimum Tech did allude to with this clicks and that I totally agree with, and that is the inconsistency of the weight of the clicks. It does get quite a bit stiff towards the back of the clicks. If you're fingertip gripping your mouse and holding and clicking at the back of the mouse, which is kind of what this shape is pretty good for, the clicks do get pretty stiff and pretty hard to press, unlike say on the Lamzu Atlantis or the Razer Viper V2 Pro, which has pretty consistent weightage throughout the entirety of the click. So if you're fingertip gripping it and clicking on the back of the mouse, be prepared to be exerting more force on the main clicks, or be prepared to click a bit more forward if you want to maintain a lighter click on your grip. The sensor in this mouse is the Pulsar 3395, and really it's kind of the best sensor you can get right now, and it has something called motion sync, which is basically a feature that syncs up the polling rate of the sensor with the polling rate of your wireless receiver so that there is more consistent tracking. Thing is though, while scientifically and statistically it's going to be an improvement, you really can't feel the difference, so don't worry about it too much. It's a brilliant sensor, a perfect sensor, and you have no issues whatsoever. Battery life is also pretty good on this. I could game for about 20-30 hours before needing a charge. Also, wirelessly, the Pulsar X2 has plenty of performance. There's no real perceivable lag, and it's responsive enough to not really have a problem. And while tests online seem to indicate that this does have a little bit more click latency than the Razers and Logitechs of the high end, you really can't feel it. There are other things that are way more important, like shape and feel of the mouse, that supersede this small minimal difference in click latency performance. As for other things like the tracking of the mouse, it's very smooth, with the stock feet being a standard PTFE that is very comparable to really any mouse that I've tried, from the Viper to the SUPERLIGHT. But I do really enjoy the glass feet on the special edition. I'll give some long-term opinions on using glass feet maybe in a couple of weeks, and I know some people would hate the glass feet, but I absolutely love the glass feet. Now the X2 isn't exactly perfect for me though, but the main issues really are the early software and firmware problems. For example, with the very problematic amount of latency with the auto sleep mode of this gaming mouse. Now most of these issues that were reported on Reddit early on seem to have been fixed, but the X2 being a mouse from a smaller brand means it's more than likely going to have more issues than something from a bigger brand like Razer or Logitech in terms of QC and features not working as intended. On top of the fact that the Pulsar X2 is a lot harder to get and get support for. So then, should you buy the Pulsar X2? Well, for me, it's a definite thumbs up. I mean, it's become a daily driver for a reason. And it's an excellent gaming mouse with great specs, a very lightweight, a truly unique shape that feels like a lower profile, slimmer, and more sleek Logitech G Pro. It's also cheaper than the G Pro and Viper that it's clearly a competitor to. So if you have the chance to buy one, since availability on a small brand's product like the Pulsar X2 is going to be limited, do definitely consider it if you are someone using a claw fingertip grip on a medium-sized mouse. Also, if you have smaller hands, you might want to be checking out the X2 Mini, which is essentially an identical shape but a lot smaller, in the same way the Viper Mini is a smaller shape to the Viper. This could very well be the Viper Mini alternative that many people are looking for, since Razer does not want to make the Viper Mini wireless a thing. Anyway though, good job Pulsar. This is another excellent release from your brand, and while there are a couple of hiccups with its launch, it is very well done and a very competitive, excellent product overall that I think anyone looking at a mouse in its size and shape style should definitely heavily consider, even if they don't end up buying it and end up going with its very similar competitor, the Lamzu Atlantis. By the way, if you want a comparison between these two very similar looking mice, make sure you like and subscribe, because that video is coming really soon in a couple of days. And with that, thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.